Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
I grew up playing video games, right? Everybody understands walking through a scenario on a screen and what that looks like. And it's a heck of a lot easier to understand what a space is like that than rifling through sets of drawings and various renderings.
Welcome to Barriers to Entry, a design innovation podcast on the Surround Podcast Network. This is the show where we obsess over the not too distant future of the architecture, design, and creative industries and the ideas, tools, technologies, and talent that will take us there. I'm Andrew Lane, co-founder at Digby, and with me as always is Bobby Bonett, the Chief Growth Officer at Sandow Design Group. Welcome, Bobby. How you doing today?
I'm well. Nice hat, Andrew. We're both black hatted up and Master and Dynamic headphones on.
It's hat day.
It's hat day. Monday hat day.
We didn't even know. Yeah. Do they still do that in school? You've got kids. That used to be a thing in school where you would pay like to a charity. You'd pay like, it was probably a nickel when I was in school. And then you'd get to wear your hat for the day. Is that still a thing they're doing?
Do they have nickels in Canada? Yes, they do have a hat day. They've got school spirit day, dress up like a superhero day, and all that fun stuff. So we're celebrating hat day today. I think that's where we're at.
Well, I really just wanted to tee up the idea of childhood pursuits, actually, Bobby, because, our guest today is someone who has a few stories to tell, we hope, around that space. But like from your standpoint, did you always think you were going to be a podcaster when you were growing up, or did you have other aspirations?
Yeah, I think when I was 1 year old, I asked for a Shure microphone. No, actually, I was a realist when I was younger. Obviously, like I played Little League baseball and all that stuff. But by the time I was like 10 years old, I remember watching, I think he was probably on the Yankees at this point, or maybe he was on the Tigers, Cecil Fielder playing first base. And I had said to my mom, I think I could make the major leagues as a pinch runner. What do you think? So even at that point, I knew like I did not have the power. I was a pretty good fielder, but I had the speed to potentially relieve Cecil Fielder in late innings on second base to get to home on a base hit. So that was my dream as a youngster.
Big Cess was not taking a lot of extra bases back in the day. That is for sure.
No, he was station to station.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a much better aspiration than I had. My cousin owned one of the local gas stations, and I always told my mom that if I could do anything, I would work at that gas station. And I think she wanted to encourage me to spread my wings a little bit more than just to try and work for my cousin. But I love the smell of gasoline. And, that was where my dreams were at the time, pre-podcasting, of course.
Pre-podcasting, gasoline to podcasting. Well, with that, let's welcome today's guest. Bill Mandara is Chief Executive Officer at Mancini Duffy, an innovative full-service design firm specializing in architecture, planning, and interior design. In his time at Mancini Duffy, Bill has transformed the 100-plus-year-old firm into a tech-driven design studio that prioritizes creativity that is supercharged through cutting-edge technology. Bill's professional success is only part of his story, though. He's, as he puts it, more of a failed musician, a former drummer for a 90s cover band. And today he has 4 albums on Spotify. We'll get into all of that today. Welcome to the pod, Bill Mandara.
Hello there. I wish somebody told me it was hat day. I could not look at my receding hairline on the screen there. That would do wonders for my self-esteem.
I don't know if producer Rob sent the memo around. It's great to have you on, Bill. And, we wanted to have a little fun talking about childhood pursuits or younger pursuits in younger days. But we have to ask off the top, can you tell us a little bit about this cover band?
Sure. I mean, I spent most of my early 90s and mid 90s in a cover band playing drums all throughout New Jersey, Jersey Shore, some places in New York. And it was a blast. And I'll tell you, in my perfect world, I definitely would have been a drummer. But, having parents that didn't really see the way of that didn't really work. So they forced me to didn't force me, but it was highly suggested that going to college and becoming an architect would be a better path. So I kind of did that to placate them. And then at some point when when it wasn't quite working out, I decided I had to take this thing seriously, but always keep the music in the background as something to do.
I gotta ask, were you like a cover band for one band in particular, or were you just playing a set of a whole bunch of favorites, or how did that play out?
Oh no, we weren't a tribute band.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not good enough. If it was up to me, I'd be in a Rush tribute band, and I'm certainly not good enough for that. But
oh wow, yeah.
But yeah, no, we played all the stuff you would typically hear in the '90s. It's funny, we actually started off playing kind of mix of classic rock songs and some hard rock songs, and then when the late 91, 92 happened with all those Seattle grunge bands, we switched over very quickly to more of the stuff that was popular in the day. So I would say whenever my kids have Lithium on Sirius XM or something, I'm like, yep, played it.
I had to ask because the professor, the high school teacher who got me into the world of media and communications was Keith Richards in a band called Voodoo Lounge that was a Rolling Stones tribute. So, I was shaped by tribute and cover bands from an early age that way too. So I love that.
Yeah, I could never do the costumes either, I can't imagine having to dress up like, Peter Criss every day or something, as much as Kiss songs are fun to play.
Well, you said it was strongly suggested to you that you go to college, and then Bill, you mentioned that design was kind of the route you took, or architecture. So how did you make your way, or at what point did you decide that would be the degree you ultimately pursued?
Probably when I was like 10 years old. My dad's contractor, grandfather's a contractor, great-grandfather who came over here on a boat from Sicily was a laborer. So it was pretty much predetermined in the stars that this was the industry into which I would fall in. And it was, both my grandfather and my father thought it was important that if I do take part in this industry, I carve my own path outside of what they had done and lean more into the architectural design part of it rather than the contractor part of it. So from early days going to work with my dad and my grandfather and kind of hanging out in the trailer and taking some tracing paper and redrawing elevations or floor plans of what it was kind of really wasn't, I don't know, it really wasn't something that I thought about. It was just kind of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an architect and, or at least I'll do that, like I said, to kind of placate everybody while I had these bizarre dreams of playing drums for Smashing Pumpkins or something like that.
My father was a general contractor, and he's still proud of me when I can hang a painting that's level. So we definitely went in different directions. So now you're at Mancini Duffy, and it's one of the 75 biggest firms in the world. You're sitting there as CEO. So how'd you wind up in that seat? Because that's a quite the journey. Then if you look at the last 25 years or so, 30 years. It
sure is, and it's definitely. I would say I was one of the least likely people to be in this seat when I first came to Mancini. I had worked at a small firm in Jersey for about 12 years. And when I left there, I left to open an office in New Jersey for a New York City firm, which went well and it was all good until 2009 happened and the industry kind of exploded in a bad way or imploded. And ultimately, that firm was acquired by Mancini Duffy. And I was a little ornery at the time about it. I'm not going to lie. And, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when my wife and I had our first kid and then our second kid and had a house and all these bills, it was clear that my salary wasn't going to cut it for all the things that needed to happen. And, the job my wife had, my oldest son is 21 years old, so it was 21 years ago, and they weren't as progressive as firms are now as far as working moms and the things that we should be doing for them. So it was kind of, guess you're staying home. And my wife, scrappy as can be, she was doing a bunch of different odd jobs and working the whole time, but we needed more income. So I started doing a lot of freelance work over the years. And by the time I got here to Mancini Duffy, I was doing a tremendous amount of freelance work, which was probably, coming into equal to, if not more than what I was making at my job. So I was kind of pretty determined that it was about time to ditch working for somebody and just do my own thing. And I was doing a menagerie of different types of jobs, everything from, every Saturday morning I'd hop in my car and go somewhere and, measure a bunch of units on a roof in Brooklyn or something that needed to replace, to apartments, to this, that, and the other thing. And it was, well, maybe I can do this and sit in my sweatpants and not have to answer to anybody. So that was the plan until I met my business partner, Christian, who was brought in here by Ralph Mancini to actually endeavor a ownership transition of the firm. And him and I became friends quite quickly. He laid out the plan because we're discovered also pretty quickly we were very like-minded. He laid out the plan to me and I said, well, that sounds pretty interesting too. And here we are. But I would tell you, when I first came to Mancini, I wasn't the happiest camper, and I probably wasn't as open-minded about being here as I was, because I didn't want to work in the city, didn't want to work for a larger company, you name it.
When you arrived at Mancini Duffy, I think, we had chatted before that you knew you had to change a few things. You're not a suit and tie guy, if we're to appropriate that or paraphrase you, Bill. So what did you learn or maybe need to unlearn from previous managers that you've applied at Mancini Duffy? And I know creativity is a big kind of focus of the way in which you've approached the firm.
It is. And for sure, to say I'm not a suit and tie guy is not an understatement, is an understatement. There's a lot of things I've learned throughout my career from people. I've learned I've spent a lot of time on the end of leaders, and I understand there's a lot of things I like, a lot of things I don't like. And I really try to look at the things I don't like as far as an employee and make sure I don't repeat those things. It's very easy as a leader, as somebody, in a position of somewhat of power in a firm, to say, well, I had to deal with this, so do you. A lot of us of a certain vintage came up at a time where there was roaming ogres in the workplace that would, we all learned a lot from, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience. So we don't want to do that. To say architecture is an industry full of a lot of large egos is also an understatement. So I thought it was really important to put my own ego aside and make sure that everybody that's doing work does get ample credit for it. And I think those are some things that go a long way. And, that wasn't really what I experienced when I came to Mancini with the existing ownership, but it was a lot of what I experienced in my career. So we knew we wanted to diversify the firm, change it to a place that was fun to go to work for everybody, not just people that were into high design of corporate interior spaces, and make it, again, just overall make it a place people really want it to be.
Love the people focus in all of this. And, obviously talent is just an increasingly prescient conversation in industry. But what are some of the, without giving away too much of your secret sauce, of course, some of the characteristics that you're looking for someone who did help you to build that culture? Sure.
I mean, listen, first and foremost, we're interested in people that are themselves. If you show up here dressed in black with those silly little round glasses, you're probably going to have a nice, polite interview and not be called back, unless that's who you really are, in which case I don't know that that's going to fit in. But, listen, we want people, for lack of a better term, that are cool, I mean? And when I say cool, I don't mean, like the Fonz cool. I mean, that are, they're themselves and are easy to be around and want to learn and are receptive to taking direction, as well as receptive to sharing their own ideas, sharing their own thoughts on what they might want to do. We have so many things we've done here, so many things we've accomplished, whether it's business units, different practice areas, that are all the result of people stepping up and saying, hey, I have an idea, and knowing that leadership is receptive to that and wants to hear it. And we want to give people the opportunity to realize those ideas.
You referenced, Bill, folks maybe manifesting different departments at the firm based on their interests. Can you talk about the diversity and backgrounds that you now have working at the firm that have resulted from you kind of leaning into this idea of folks owning their creativity, being who they are, and maybe just you being able to hire people who aren't maybe like the traditional folks you'd see at a firm of your size?
Sure. I can give a couple examples. We have one woman who's been here her entire career who worked on a high school. We were fortunate enough to do a technology building for a prominent Catholic high school in Long Island. And she decided she really enjoyed that line of work and wanted to explore that. And through her efforts, we have whole portfolio now of schools and education that we work on, and we do that on a regular basis throughout. We have a gentleman who was kind of given a job as an airport lounge by somebody. He took it, kicked ass on it, and then was like, I really like this work. I want to establish an aviation practice. And now, I don't even know how many years later, at least 7 or 8 years later, we have a full aviation practice. We work in every major airport in, within a 5-state area here in New York City, as well as all over the country, doing lounges, back of house. Mm-hmm. And that person's goal is to do a terminal, which, some people would kind of laugh at, like, oh, you just did a lounge. How are you going to do a terminal? But we're like, let's do it. Let's put the resources in there, whether it's making sure we have the proper staff that has the experience and credentials to get that work, or, making sure that we're out there seeking those relationships. And because of that, I'm eternally grateful, because that's one of the practice areas we have that did not exist prior to him.
What about when people come over from other firms and you have people join? Like, what is the experience that you'd hope for them to have, or how would you like for them to describe, the contrast between, your firm and where they came from?
Listen, in a perfect world, they'd come to our firm and say, wow, this is a great place to be. And the firm I just left was a great place to be, because I'd really like it if, overall our profession was different. But that's not the real world. So, I hope that when people come here, they feel that this is home. This is a place where they can be their authentic self. They can do the work they want to do, and they feel like they're able to give their best efforts, and it's appreciated.
Do you have individuals who will feel that the work environment is starkly different from where they came from, or is that not the case once somebody has been at Mancini Duffy for some time after getting through that interview process?
I think we do. We have a lot of people that come here, and, especially if somebody comes from a larger, more corporate-minded firm, listen, there's certain things that those corporate-minded firms do well, and we have to do as well, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's we're doing real work. But again, I think the overall, what I really would like them to experience is that it is a different mentality. Mm-hmm. We're not here to push a certain design aesthetic. As one example, we're here to mm-hmm. listen to our clients and do what's best for them. It's not about necessarily pushing forth my name or any of my partner's name. It's about, you doing good work and taking ownership of it. Those are some things I hope are different. And again, we like to have fun. I'm not saying other firms don't have fun, but, we do monthly town halls. My son asked me the other day, and I was trying to figure out what our yearly budget on how much we spend on high noons is. And I don't know. It was embarrassing, but
I got a fun free idea for you. Corporate hat day might really take off.
I think I have a New York Jets hat somewhere stuffed in my locker over here.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Avi Rajagopal, Editor-in-Chief of Metropolis. And the titans of the A&D industry are going to be gathering in Chicago for NeoCon. And your favorite podcast, Neo Conversations, is back in partnership with the Mart and Turf. I'm going to be your host this year, and I'll bring you some quick insights from the brightest minds at NeoCon. We're talking brain stuff, hybrid work, diversity, sustainability. So tune in wherever you get your podcasts.
So we're going to get into the tech side with a little bit more detail, because we love to talk about that on the pod in particular. But obviously, you're doing things a little bit differently. You bring technology into your process. When it comes to that talent, is there a training process that you bring them into? Is there a learning curve? Like, what's it like when you bring people in fresh and want to get them, brought up to speed on the way that you guys do things at Mancini Duffy?
Yeah, sure. So, our entire process that we do is different, I hope, than most other firms. It's an immersive process. When it comes to software, I feel that a lot of the younger folks coming out of school have an edge up because they're teaching a lot of these things, whether it's, video game software and engines and all those things. Everything we do is Revit based. We have, one of our principals here developed an entire new intranet that's been rolled out recently, which is fantastic. And then there's dozens of very thoughtful training videos on there. We have sessions once a month where some of our people that are more tech oriented host over a lunch. They give all tips and tricks for it. But overall, it's learning and adapting to a little bit different of a process. And again, if you have an idea and you think this is the way it's working, but maybe we could try this, we want to hear it. It's not, we're not trying to force people into boxes.
I do think that's really thoughtful. Onboarding is not easy, especially when you're dealing with folks who are coming out of school and might not have spent a ton of time in person. There's a lot of individuals who will take a lot of classes remote, and clearly you've invested and are continuing to invest in a really rigorous program. So folks feel as though they're able to hit the ground running. There's probably a self-serve nature to it, but you don't feel as though you're kind of spinning wheels as a new employee trying to figure out where you fit in, but you're really getting indoctrinated in a good way into the Mancini Duffy family.
Agreed. I mean, I can go by my own experience. When I graduated college, there was wow. I thought I knew some stuff. It was I really didn't know more than probably like 2/3 of what I needed to know. And I was fortunate enough to have some people who were still friends to mentor me and really just kind of sit me down and show me how to do things in the real world. And we try to do that as well. You want to make sure that it's not necessarily me. It can be me, but everybody in the office, it's all of our responsibility to help develop people. Some of our best folks that we have worked here as interns throughout college. And that's kind of the dream, because when they do graduate, they understand most of the processes we have here and the way we work, and they can slide right in and be productive. I mean, I can tell you, I don't even know how productive I was the first year of my career. Probably not very.
Right. And you understand them too, which is a huge benefit, less of an unknown.
For me, at least, it's all about, taking those things and not repeating them just because I had to go through that.
Right. So your journey with tech, I'm sure it didn't begin here, but a seminal moment at Mancini Duffy was the design lab that you began 7 or 8 years ago. So how did that vision get started, and what did design lab look like when you first launched it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, lest anybody give me credit for it, don't. There's a gentleman here, Michael Kipfer, who's actually he's become a friend over the years as well. But he came to Christian and me one day. Christian's my partner, and had this idea. He said, I want to start using VR technology. I want to start looking into initiatives like 3D printing and all these different things. And we said, okay, cool. And he's like, hey, I want to kick somebody out of an office and put everything in that room. And we said, sure, no problem. So we kind of had, it started off as this weird little room where, people were walking around with those cardboard box glasses on their head. Mm-hmm. And, before you know it, I was able to take that and show a client that I was trying to convince not to make a 2-story lobby, because it would have felt like a Kellogg cereal box. And he gave me this thing, and I was able to give him these glasses, and the guy put it on. He goes, oh, damn, Mandara, you're right. This doesn't feel good. Don't do that. And it was like, for me, I was like, wow, we just solved hours and hours of conversations and trying to show things in renderings with this. And that was a very basic render sphere of something that was done then. And so from then, we call him Kip. He brought in people that are software developers. He came to me. He wanted to take over, instead of that office, take over a conference room in our old office. And we said, sure. And we gave him a budget and built it out to specifications with all sorts of cool stuff. And again, developed the software, and then the software helped develop our process. So ultimately to where we are now in our office, where we moved in 2 years ago, where our design lab is literally, it's the centerpiece of our office. It's where the majority of our client meetings, whether they're design meetings, presentations, or a lot of our internal work take place. We like to bring people into the process rather than sit there and, in my career, unfortunately, I could name too many times when I've showed clients a set of drawings, showed them a few renderings. The people that made the render, we either send them somewhere, or you have a kid who can make these renderings, and they look perfect, right? It's the exact amount of things are in there. And sometimes maybe you fudge little things in these renderings so they look good and they kick ass. And then the project's built and somebody's like, wow, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. Or,
right.
You go into an interior space and somebody's like, oh, I didn't know that's what it was. And you're like, dude, you looked at the drawing, you saw it, which is neglecting the fact that they don't look at drawings every day. It's not, it's not that they're not very smart people, but it's not what they do. They don't look at drawings. So what we do now is we've stripped all that away and we bring people into the process. We bring them into VR. We bring them into AR now, which is fantastic. We do all our presentations also, big video screen. So you're walking through the space and you can experience the space. And that's from day one. Day one, we have a whitewash model that you can walk through and experience, and you can feel what it looks like. You can feel how it is. As we add finishes, you can feel it, look at it, and it's great because a person who doesn't know how to read a reflected ceiling plan can just look up and be like, oh, that's how the ceiling looks. I don't like that. Move it. Mm-hmm. And because of the software not me, the smart folks that work here, created, and it's now actually patented, we can make changes on the fly. We can say, okay, I don't like the way this feels. I'm going to move it over here. This feels good. How wide is it? And they have a tool that they can measure in there. It's very powerful, and it strips away a lot of the pretense of what we do and invites people in the process.
So kind of throughout that, you alluded to the interplay between the technology and the overall, client service processes that you guys have in place. Can you talk about what sounds like a healthy tension between those two things? Like, how are you kind of determining what needs to be built next versus how much is just sort of straight innovation that's saying, oh, we could do this differently now that we have this piece, kind of along the lines of what you described with the original cardboard VRs?
An example of how it can develop, I think, is during COVID, we were using this software and we'd bring everybody in the office and we would come in, you would experience it. It was great. Our folks came up with what's ostensibly, we call a 2-player version of it, where you don't have to be, you can put goggles on if you have them at home, but you can then run through on your laptop remotely, like you're playing Call of Duty or something like that. And you can experience the space. You can go in there, you can leave notes, you can mark things up. We were working with a client that was in Europe, and they would go through, mark things up in the middle of the night, New York time, and we'd come back and we'd see the notes and we'd go in there, oh, okay, and we'd move them around. So that's, some of the ways in which we're able to adapt to it. And then as the technology changes, what we now have is the AR version of it, where in a lot of cases, we go to the site and you can load the existing space into AR and you can switch on and off what it's going to look like versus what it is now. And you can walk through and you can feel, if it's a restaurant, what the customer experience is to walk from the entry to a seat, what it feels, how close you are to somebody else. And you can actually look out and you can feel it because there's a difference when you're walking and you're transporting yourself in a box in VR to different places to actually walking the space and feeling it. So those are a couple of advancements that just happen as a combination of things that are available and things that are just making the experience better. Because it's our own software, because we have control over that, we're able to adapt pretty easily. We're doing a vehicle maintenance facility for a client, and they asked if they could drive the vehicles through there. And I said yes. And I came back and, I told the guys, here's my Amex, go buy a steering wheel and some stuff and figure it out. And sure enough, they're able to figure it out. And we're able to provide that experience for them. And honestly, it's valuable because there's things you see as you're driving through there. You see, oh, wait, I don't really know where to go. Let's put some signage over there. And that's a lot better to happen in a virtual model than somebody going through a place that's done when everybody got paid and having to then go back in and fix it.
I'm sure clients were probably maybe not overwhelmed, but we're trying to figure out this technology piece earlier on. We've had conversations with a lot of guests who have said, getting a client to put on goggles can be a challenge. Where are you with your clients in that spectrum right now? Do they get excited for the technology? Do you sometimes need to coax them to embrace the technology? Or are you at the point now where working with Mancini Duffy and getting access to your technology is a big selling point and people want to dive right in?
It absolutely is a selling point for us. A lot of times I have people ask me, oh, what's the charge for that? And the answer is it's not, because that's what we do. It's our process. I would say there really is no coaxing for us. Early on, when it was kind of these clunky things like the goggles that made you feel like you just got off, a roller coaster and you're not feeling so hot, it was a little bit different. But the way the software has evolved and the way our folks have made it so it's, there's a lot of things that have to happen with frame rates and all that stuff so you don't feel a little seasick afterwards. But There's no convincing. People love it. I would argue that, and the way our technology works and the programs, it's super easy to use. It's basically you have a trigger. It's called tool belt because you look down and there's these various tools you click, and it's deliberately made easy to use. I don't want to say simple because that has a negative connotation, but it's easy to use and it's user friendly. So there's really no hesitancy I've seen on our clients in forever to use it, just because, again, it's easy. Everybody understands walking, for the most part now. I grew up playing video games, right? Everybody understands walking through a scenario on a screen and what that looks like. And it's a heck of a lot easier to understand what a space is like that than rifling through sets of drawings and various renderings that at the end of the day aren't always real. I mean, shouldn't be a secret that you want your rendering to look really, really great. So you're not going to put some things that are kind of gnarly in there, right? And if you're doing a rendering and there's a strobe in the middle of a wall, you're not going to show that strobe, because the majority of our consultants are also working in Revit. We put all those things in there. So you're walking through, you're going to be like, oh crap, there's a strobe there. Let's, hey, MEP guy, can't have a strobe there. Let's move it. So it also keeps people honest. And again, I think everybody appreciates that.
How much is that transparency? And I mean, I'm sure there's a narrative around cost savings as well that comes through these processes. Like, how much is that part of what you lead with as your story as a firm versus something that, people just kind of get as a part of the package that you'd said previously?
No, I mean, obviously we lead with that a lot. It was one of the, it's something I believe that sets us apart from others. Not that other firms aren't, investing in technology, coming up with things. But I think the way that we've combined, I've always seen VR technology, especially used kind of as the big ending to the story, right? Okay, we've walked you through the drawings and now put this on and walk around and look at how great it is. And you're in a static environment, which is cool. But having it as part of the process, which we do, it's better for everybody. And there is a savings, and I wouldn't say cost savings because, that doesn't really tend to happen too much, but it's a better direction of people's efforts. So I would rather somebody spending the effort in designing a space, making sure things are thoughtfully done, than going into InDesign and spell checking everything to make sure that, somebody didn't put I before E, except, or something like that. I think it's, and architects aren't that great at spelling or grammar either. So I think it's a better use of people's time and energy to focus on that. And people seem to appreciate it.
I think before we move on from technology, Bill, we do want to get a sense of what your take is on AI. Or maybe how Mancini Duffy is either leveraging AI, or if you have ways in which AI has been integrated into the practice, or if there's just a general philosophy at the firm as it relates to artificial intelligence.
Sure. I mean, my personal feelings as somebody who grew up watching movies like The Terminator and The Matrix, it scares the crap out of me. Just watched The Terminator the other night with my son. I was like, oh man, Skynet. But listen, it's a tool. It has its place. It should never replace the creative spirit of people, but it is a tool that can be used to iterate quickly and efficiently, where, would take people hours and hours and hours to do things. So we definitely use it as a tool to iterate. But to me, the second somebody uses it to replace a person or anything creative, and by the way, it extends past architecture into anything, into music, into writing. I think that's when you start to really kind of lose the soul of who we are. And, it's so I guess to summarize, I'm a little disjointed here because my personal feelings on it, but it does have a place, and when used properly as a tool, just like anything else, people would say that when I first started in my career, all the more veteran architects would look at me like, you kids with your AutoCAD and you're playing games over there. What are you doing? And like, I was like, I still maintain I would crush people in AutoCAD because I'm pretty good at it. But now it appeared to me like maybe 10 years ago, I was like, wow, when BIM came out, it's like now I'm like the old guy over here yelling at clouds like, you kid, AutoCAD's where it's at. And there's always something else that's going to come, and they're all tools, and as long as they're used thoughtfully, like to the point, like all the old people thought, you don't know how to draw stuff because the computer's drawing it for you. And that's not really what was happening. It was just the old guy take on it. So all of these things are tools.
You mentioned Christian Giordano, your partner, a couple of times, Bill, who also has a fantastic podcast, The Anti-Architect. And a lot has changed since you and Christian took over the firm. We've talked about people, we've talked about creativity, we've talked about technology. So from the time that that transition happened, where you and Christian became co-owners, you became CEO, has the client profile changed as a result of all of the inner workings, changings that you and Christian have implemented at the firm?
Absolutely. It was deliberate. We wanted to make sure that we had a diversity of practice. I mentioned previously, I was at a firm in 2009 whose core business was interiors for corporate financial clients. And, that didn't go so well in 2009 and then following 2010. So it's good to have a lot of different business units that we do. So, we've intentionally done that. Mancini Duffy was known as a corporate interiors firm. My background in particular is more on the base building side and more with a wider breadth of project types, whether it's industrial, retail, all those different things. So we already had things that we did. We already had things that the firm's history allowed us to do. So we were able to bring in different types of work early on. And then there's some things that more strategically we did, where we acquired a firm 2 years ago that had a very robust multifamily residential practice as well as a healthcare practice. And again, combining that with what we do, we were able to grow that. And now we have, those are two different practices that are doing quite well. 2 years ago, I was able to, through a friend, meet somebody who had been at the same firm for 20 years, who's a life sciences and labs expert. And as it so happened, he was looking for a new home, able to bring him in here and again, combine it with his experience. And now we have a life sciences practice. We're a real player in that. And then, like I mentioned previously, folks kind of doing things on their own and coming up with, I want to do this. We have an aviation practice. We have an education practice. In addition, we still do corporate interiors, but now we do sound stages. We do. My biggest project I ever worked on, TSX Broadway, was like, that's just kind of a crazy project with everything, a lot of different things in it. But, we have a ton of restaurants we do here that was funny. I think we probably did maybe 10 restaurants before COVID. And then since then, we have so many clients of restaurants we're doing, rolling them out across the country, various restaurants, helping them develop concepts. Everything from suburban restaurants where you might go on to watch your favorite team on Monday Night Football to super high-end Michelin star chefs in the city. So that's been the thing we've been doing, which is great. So, and it's really good. It's important to me, and it was important to Christian as well, to have that diversity of practice, just because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're going to wake up and, it seems like every day something horrible is on the news, but you never know when you're going to wake up and the bottom's going to fall out of something. So at the very least, it's good to have other business units that if one thing falters, the other things can help pick up the slack.
Tied a nice bow back to your cover band story off the top about learning the grunge songs to keep the band as relevant as possible. So the diversification theme is great.
Well, if some of my former bandmates listen to this, they wouldn't agree, because as much as I did love the grunge stuff, but they would always want to throw stuff out. Anytime somebody would put a song that I didn't like, whether it's like country music, I'd be like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. So they probably wouldn't agree with that. But yeah, fair point.
You did reference it really quickly. If you could just talk about how the whole ecosystem comes together in a project like TSX Broadway, just a massive, win for y'all.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that was a heck of a project. the team was staggering. I mean, we had so many people on work here on that project, just in Mancini, let alone all the other dozens and dozens of consultants. But I give a lot of credit to the client, the developer, who really established a different mindset for that. They leased a field office a block and a half away from the project and insisted that everybody working on the project have representation in that office. So we had at some point in time, we had 10, 12 people working in that office, which is different for a project. And again, I could talk for hours on that project, but it was such a complicated project with so many moving parts and so many different people. Having everybody there and not being able to shoot off a snarky email to somebody because they're sitting across from you, and just having the conversation, which is something I think is lacking in general today in business overall, really made a big difference, because it's easy to sit here and say, oh, do this, and it's another thing to look the person in the face and say it. And it really facilitated an environment of collaboration where people did work together, where they may not have worked together differently. So, I mean, again, we had so many people here that worked on it. I out of all of them, I probably contributed the least. So I'm grateful to all of them for doing it, and grateful for the client for showing the faith in us to get that project done, because it's not like anybody out there really had that in their back pocket to say, oh, sure, I lifted a theater and built a stage and a hotel on top of it. It's not like, anybody really could say that they did that. So there was a certain amount of faith that the client had in us, which I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah, very cool. Congrats on that, Bill.
Thank you.
We do each episode always love to turn the mic over to our guests for our plug section. Bill, if you have anything that you'd like to promote going on in your life, where folks can find you on Spotify, or anything in the professional realm that you'd like to promote going on at Mancini Duffy.
Sure. So, I mean, listen, we'll start on the professional end here. Here at Mancini Duffy, we're actively looking to grow. And that means on clients and staff. So anybody ever wants to hear, I'd say visit our website. There's direction on there for whom to speak to about careers here, if you'd like interested in working here, or our marketing team. So yeah, listen, we're always looking to grow and make new relationships. Personally, yeah, I just having spent so much time in cover bands and having arguments with people, and during COVID, I figured out how to record. I spent a lot of time learning how to use Logic Pro, and a lot of time making some really awful sounding recordings, which I'm listening to. And I listened to some of the first ones and I cringe, because I'm like, but I've learned how to record pretty well in my own house. I do play every instrument, and I record a bunch of albums. And if you just type my name into Spotify, you'll see them there. So I have friends that'll help out, people that I played with in bands over the year. My son, my 21-year-old son, Joey, he'll sing on a bunch of songs for me, which is always great. He's super talented himself. So yeah, if you just released my 4th album, I'm pretty proud of it. I actually took a lot more time and effort into the songwriting on this one than previous ones, and really learned from a lot of those mistakes. So
it's one of the first times I've heard a story of someone who wanted to learn something during COVID and actually followed through on it. Like, everyone was super motivated in the first 2 months of COVID. I'm really going to learn I still have a ukulele somewhere.
Well, in a plot twist, I actually made my own sourdough starter and learned how to make sourdough bread like last year after COVID. So I kind of was late to the game on that. But it tastes great. I made a few loaves for dinner last night for Mother's Day for my beautiful wife. So.
That's a definite COVID classic. The other thing we love to do is just to give our guests a chance to provide any advice or resources that you'd share with a listener, a young person out there, someone who's looking to, figure out their path in the world of architecture and design, build the innovation muscle that you guys have brought so successfully to Mancini Duffy. So is there anything out there that you would share as a resource, or something that people look at, or just a piece of advice? I
mean, I guess I would give the same advice that my mother always gave me. Everything happens for a reason. There's challenges in life. There's things that get put before you that aren't so great. There's things that get put before you that are great. And everything's an opportunity, and everything's, whether it's an opportunity to learn or opportunity to grow or opportunity to develop yourself or your career. I would tell you, when my company was acquired by Mancini Duffy, I was pissed. I was not happy. And there was no dig at Mancini Duffy. I don't want to work at a large firm. I don't want to do this. And here we are all these years later. It was one of the greatest opportunities ever presented to me. And like I said, I found out about it while tailgating in a Jets game in the parking lot. I was not happy. So, everything is an opportunity and should be looked at like that.
Nothing good happens
at a Jets game. At a Jets, yeah.
Well, I'd love to argue with you.
I'm a Jets season ticket holder, Bill. So.
Oh, well, hit me up if you ever want to tailgate. We have a pretty good setup. Me and my son.
There you go. Rob, what did you learn today?
I learned that not all offices are made equal in a very positive way. And I like that, a lot of the things that have been going on over the eras have been evolving and changing and in a way that feels fun and innovative. I really love the idea of using AR and VR instead of just like, look at this mock-up I've put together, right? Like people can actually feel like they're in the zone, and that is incredible. And I put on a hat for today's recording, just so.
Which is amazing. Hat day.
There you go.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great just hearing all the backstory and, having a really interesting creative conversation that's emerged and evolved over so many years. I definitely take away this idea that, you can be really successful in business without having to be a buttoned up business guy. You can definitely succeed being people first and putting people first. And then obviously the way that you keep the creative soul throughout all of that as well is, sometimes counterintuitive to people who are thinking about what it means to be a part of a large organization.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. Appreciate it.
It's also always a pleasure to work with the Barriers to Entry production team. So we'd like to, as always, extend a big thank you to them, our producer, Rob Schulte, fellow member of Hat Day, and everyone else back at the studio by Sandow in the Pod Cave. Barriers to Entry is a part of the Surround Podcast Network. Make sure you go to surroundpodcasts.com. That's podcasts with an S. Smash the follow button and then join us next time as we continue to break down the barriers to entry. I think you're the first to officially reference Skynet on the pod.
Well, there you go. Don't sue me, James Cameron.